Can you believe it? After ranking the first 4 Simpsons games, we've now officially reached 1992. And even better, the next game is not made by Imagineering. Acclaim released a ridiculous amount of Simpsons games in the early 90s, but it was Konami that developed and published The Simpsons for arcades, and they didn't abandon the franchise straight away. The Simpsons arcade was ported to MS-DOS and Commodore 64, and during 1991, Konami hired Distinctive Software to develop another Simpsons game for them, Bart's House of Weirdness. Konami didn't develop this themselves, so sadly no Simpsons Arcade 2, instead we have Distinctive Software on board, who have largely been making racing games before this point. They also ported games to platforms like the Amiga, Commodore 64 and MS-DOS, only that was under the name Unlimited Software. The name Distinctive Software is fairly unknown, in part because they were purchased by EA in 1991 and renamed to EA Canada, and have since become the main developer for all the EA sports games since then. They created the now classic NHL 94 and were a core part of EA taking over the sports market and churning out annual releases for all these different sports. Distinctive was founded by one Don Mattrick, who you may recognise as he eventually left EA to work for Microsoft and was the man who revealed the Xbox One in a now infamous press conference. So Distinctive may not be a big name in itself, but they ended up having a huge impact on the gaming industry, but that doesn't include the game we're looking at today, Bart's House of Weirdness. This has to be one of, if not the most obscure Simpsons game. It was only released for MS-DOS and came out in the middle of all the Acclaim published games that were being released at the time. In the month Bart's House of Weirdness was launched, January 1992, the port for The Simpsons Arcade for MS-DOS entered the sales chart, but Bart's House of Weirdness, a brand new game, did not. I couldn't find any adverts for this game either, and barely any reviews, so if I were to speculate, I would say this game was intentionally buried. This game released after EA had purchased Distinctive Software in 1991, so this game was likely only released out of contractual obligation for Konami, as EA owned Distinctive when Bart's House of Weirdness was actually released. It also came out in January, a rough month for any new game to release in as it's after Christmas, and I'm pretty sure it launched the same month as The Simpsons for arcade for MS-DOS, so it was given no chance to succeed. Before looking at the game, I need to take a second to appreciate the box that it comes in. The artwork for the Simpsons games as a whole are really great. They do such a good job of creating art that matches the show, but still sells what the game is all about. Similar to the VHS tapes, I love that all this artwork exists outside of the show. The box art for some of the early Simpsons games were created by Bill Morrison, an artist who was a major part of the Simpsons comics and eventually worked on Futurama. He's someone who was highly experienced at creating Simpsons art, despite not being a core member of the production team of the show itself. It's just too bad that all the artwork is associated with negativity due to the bad perception of the games. The box itself is huge. The game is on 2 small floppy disks, but this box is massive. I love these old PC boxes, so unnecessary, but such cool relics from a different era of games. I think that's enough box talk though, time to jump into Bart's House of Weirdness. Similarly to The Simpsons for arcade, we start off with a recreation of the opening of the show. I quite like it. It looks good, but sadly it's a much shortened version of the opening, only showing Bart leaving school and the couch gag, which is the same couch gag that was first used in the season 2 episode Simpsons and Delilah. There's then a very brief cutscene showing Bart being sent to his room with these oddly terrifying shadows of Homer and Marge. The game starts with Bart in his room, which you can walk around and interact with a few things. You get to use the Krusty doll and the headphones, although it's really picky about where you need to stand to be able to use them. There's also this Sideshow Bob egg thing that you can knock over, but if you do that too much, it can knock you back and kill you. It's only a joke though, you don't actually lose a life, it just annoys Bart. Stranger than that though, if you knock it back enough times without dying, a photo of Marge shaving her armpits appears on screen. Now, if you know your Simpsons, you'll recognise the photo as the one Bart takes in the season 1 episode, Homer's Night Out. Even if you get the reference, it's a very strange pick for an Easter egg, and if you don't recognise it at all, this is incredibly weird and confusing. The plot of the game is that Bart has been sent to his room, so comes up with some fun things to do, either inside the Simpsons house, out in Springfield, or with his imagination in his closet. Bart's room in the Simpsons house is essentially a hub world, where you can go and find each of the levels. I was naturally drawn to the window first, and climbing out of it allows us to play 2 different levels, the quest of Maggie's ball and I want to go to the movies. Let's try the quest of Maggie's ball first, and oh, this is another side-scrolling platformer? I was genuinely disappointed when I realised that. I thought this was a point and click or some type of adventure game. I'm apparently not the only one who thought this. In a 2014 Game Informer article, they described this game as part point and click and part action adventure. And on thegamer.com, they say that this game combines action adventure, platforming, and strategy. I don't think the people who wrote these articles played House of Weirdness, as I can definitely confirm that this is a platformer through and through with no pointing and no clicking. Straight away in this first level, you get completely swarmed by these flying bees. You can shoot at them, but it's really hard to line up your shots, and you can seemingly only shoot straight, but the bees fly all over the screen. Each level in the game is split in between individual screens, rather than one level that scrolls, but when you go from one screen to another, everything resets. You also have knockback when you get hit, so if you get knocked back by an enemy into a previous screen, you can take damage again because all the enemies are back. Forcing your way past the bees takes you to another screen with these swinging ties that you can use like a vine. Jumping on the ties allow you to swing across, but if you mistime it, you die. Each time you die and lose a life, you are kicked out of the level, so have to start it again from the beginning. There's a few bottomless pits at the start of the level, and due to the awful controls, which I'll get into later, I quickly got a game over. Okay, that was a rough start, so how about we give I Wanna Go to the Movies a go instead? This level seems a bit more forgiving. There's mosquitoes everywhere, but you have a bit more room to avoid them. I managed to get further in this stage, collecting a few coins along the way before entering the mall. In the mall are security guards and dogs, which are really difficult to kill. I found out at this point you can shoot upwards at a specific angle, but you have to fire a lot of shot at these enemies to take them out, and positioning yourself to do that is pretty awkward. The mall loops indefinitely for some reason, so it's only a matter of time before I took too much damage from the guard and got another game over. It's a pretty bad first impression for this game, and it seems really difficult, so before making myself mad by trying to beat one of these levels, how about we check out the other levels we can play? There's 6 levels available when you first start the game, and you can play them in any order you like. When starting in Bart's room at the beginning of the game, if you go left, you can choose to play Grave Danger of the Basement or The Secret of the Attic. The basement level was similar to the other levels. There's so many enemies, and I took so much damage just going through each screen. Instead of normal health, you instead have a cool meter. It starts at maximum coolness, and you become less cool whenever you get hit. If it goes all the way to uncool, you die. I ended up running out of ammo in this level, and then shortly got killed by these skeletons, so how about we jump over to the Secret of the Attic? There's more bees to deal with, although not as many as before, but I got to this screen with this sofa and moose head, and have no idea what to do. There must be something I need to do here, but I couldn't figure it out and ended up dying to the respawning bees. That's 2 more levels I could barely progress in when I first started the game, so let's check out the last 2, which you can find by going inside Bart's closet if you go to the right when in his room. These are much more abstract, being more actual dreams. So we have Space Mutant Madness and Too Much TV. Space Mutant Madness has the town taken over by the Space Mutants from the Telltale Head episode of the show, but they do a ton of damage. It only takes a few hits to die, and the level starts with a Space Mutant coming out of nowhere to hit you. I died very quickly here, only made it to a few screens. Too Much TV is just chaos. It's like being in an itchy scratchy cartoon, and like in Space Mutant Madness, every hit does a lot of damage. I died very quickly here as well. It's at this point that a lot of people will give up. It's a really rough beginning for this game, as every level feels impossible. It's one of those games. Lots of content available from the start, but playing the game feels like running into a brick wall. One of the main reasons for this game being difficult is due to how stiff the platforming controls are. To fully explain why it feels so stiff, let's jump over to Super Mario Bros. For a bit. In Super Mario Bros. You can move Mario with the D-pad, you have a run button and a jump button. Even without pressing run or jump, when you move Mario he has a top speed and it takes him time to accelerate to that speed. It's not very high, but there is straight away variation in terms of how fast Mario moves based on how long you have pressed left or right. The run button increases the amount of variation with a higher top speed, allowing for additional potential speeds that Mario is moving and giving the player an extra way to control that speed. It's now both how long you've pressed left or right and whether you're pressing the run button or not. This variation of speed is then factored into when pressing jump. The faster you're traveling, the further your jump, and you can control your jump in mid-air. All these small variations creates a large number of possibilities in terms of movement. It may not seem like much, by allowing you to travel at different speeds and giving the player different ways to control that while having that feed into the platforming, it creates much more dynamic core platforming mechanics. As you play, you subconsciously get a better sense of how the movement works and make slight adjustments. You learn how all these mechanics work together and figure out the best way to control Mario, which also creates different playstyles. Some players go fast using a range of different jumps with their own heights and distances, and some will go slow, taking their time to navigate over obstacles. It's part of the reason Super Mario Bros. Is such a classic. You can argue over the specific values and parameters of the acceleration, speed and jumping, but the relationship between these elements creates an interesting game to control. You're not pressing many buttons, but the timing and combination of your presses creates slight differences in terms of what Mario does. Most games when you're controlling a character have their own version of this, and it's something that you take for granted nowadays, but imagine if all this was removed. Imagine if you took Super Mario Bros. And there was no run button and there was no acceleration at all, so Mario always moved at a fixed speed. Also imagine that when you jump, you always jumped a fixed distance and you can't control yourself while in the air. So jumping while not moving sends you a specific height every time, and jumping to the sides always sends you the exact same distance. That's how Bart's House of Weirdness controls. The normal variation and any sense of mechanical depth you would expect out of a platformer is missing, as every action is completely fixed. It's why the game feels so stiff. You always jump the same way, and you always move the same way, and it doesn't allow for any freedom in movement. I'm sure we've all played a game like this. Some game you ended up with that is clearly cheaply made, and is overly basic because it's lacking some of these fundamentals. Now, a game doesn't have to have all the elements I described in Super Mario Bros. To be good, but having none of them results in a game that feels severely lacking with its movement and control. Okay, so despite these awful controls, we need to make some progress here, so I'm only going to focus on one level and just concentrate on beating that. I'm going to pick I Want to Go to the Movies, as that felt like it was the least punishing to play. The goal of the level is to collect 5 coins and then return to the movie theatre so you can see the new Space Mutants film. By going through the level normally, going from right to left, you can find 3 coins. It also turns out in the mall, you can walk by most of the guards. They don't attack you at first if you keep walking forward, it's only when you try and fight them that they become a problem. While the mall does loop as I mentioned before, you can actually leave the mall straight away after collecting the second coin by going right. You don't need to go through the mall again, it takes you straight out. It's one of those type of games, where you have to tap into its strange logic to progress, and if you don't, it becomes overly punishing and difficult. The rest of the coins we need are in Burns Manor, and you can climb over this fence to get in. You have to get past all the security systems to enter, which is hard at first, but after trying it enough times, you will figure out a method to get through every single screen. So you go over the fence, you shoot the second laser, you walk past the first when it goes down, shoot the third laser, avoid the water fountain, instantly jump forward to avoid the goose, spam shoot to take out the dogs, pick up that ammo, spam shoot again to kill the respawning dogs, shoot the gun upwards to take out the red thing, walk past the guard, and enter. This type of thinking and planning is how you need to approach almost every screen in this game. It really requires you to come up with specific strategies to beat levels. It can be satisfying doing this, but you need a lot of patience. Going inside the mansion allows us to shoot this box to get another coin, and in the next room has us fight against Smithers, with Mr. Burns watching. I spent so much time trying to take out Smithers here. It's random whether he'll be able to attack you or not, and you take so much damage when he does. I eventually figured out that you don't need to fight Smithers at all. The coin you need is in the piggy bank, and jumping into that gives you a coin, and after collecting it you can just jump out the window. I did eventually make myself beat Smithers to see if you would get anything special for doing so, but sadly not much happens. He runs off and a guard comes in to replace him. After a few more screens outside the manor, shooting dogs and avoiding birds, we hop over a hedge, make it back to the movie theatre, and that's finally one level down. You get a very short scene in the theatre, and then you're back in the HUD area. I wouldn't say I had a great time playing I Want to Go to the Movies, but beating it did feel surprisingly good. To go from, what the hell is this game, and how am I ever going to beat it, to actually beating a level, and yeah, it got me a bit excited. It's probably for the wrong reasons, but it felt like a real step forward. It helps that this game has a save and load feature. You don't have to beat it all in one go, so after beating this level, I was actually able to save and keep that progress. Makes me think about how much better Space Mutants or Bart vs. the World would have been if there was any way to continue or save your progress. The second level we gotta beat outside of the Simpsons house is the quest for Maggie's ball. I complained about the bees, but once you play it a few times, they're easy enough to deal with. Like with the guards, it's usually easier to run past them than try and kill them all. There's a squirrel throwing nuts that you can't jump past, and it turns out to take him out you need to fire your gun downwards to shoot him. The perspective can be a bit confusing sometimes. You can fire anywhere, but this game doesn't follow normal video game logic like platforms blocking your shots. After climbing across the roof, you jump into Bart's treehouse and can fall through the tree itself. It gets a bit creepy here. These mushroom platforms wither away and die, and there's a spider that comes from nowhere to shoot webs at you. Going to the bottom of the tree links us to an underground sewer with waste barrels floating up and down. You have to jump across these barrels, and falling off one of them restarts you to the beginning of the section. When you restart, you only take a small amount of damage, so you get plenty of attempts to do this, which is good because getting across the barrels is painful. You have to do blind leaps of faith between screens, so you jump from one screen into another and have to hope that there's a barrel there to land on. The stiff fixed jumping makes this so much harder. Every time you jump, you're committing to jumping a fixed distance. If you could alter your jump mid-air, you could adjust for the barrels below you, but no, instead it's about lining yourself up perfectly before you make the jump and then committing, which is awkward. On top of all of this, the barrel patterns are random. They all go up and down, with the yellow ones going off the bottom of the screen, so if you're standing on the yellow one where they go all the way down, you fall off. You can't learn the movement pattern of the barrels because they all go out of sync with each other and sometimes completely change speeds. It's a complete mess. Lots of hoping and praying when jumping, especially when going between the two screens. With a bit of luck, we get across the barrels and find Maggie's missing ball, which was the objective for this level. Beating these two levels gives us Bart's red cap, and a rare look at Bart in a green t-shirt. The red cap is one of the 3 cool items we need to collect to beat the game, and you get them by beating levels, so we're a third of the way there. We can save again now that we've beaten 2 levels, but as I lost 2 lives during the quest for Maggie's ball, saving actually also saves your life count. It means every time I load this save, I only have 1 life, so I only have 1 life to beat the rest of the game. Anytime I die, it's game over. It means that really, I need to beat both of these levels again and make sure I don't die to ensure I have all 3 lives. It's a bit annoying, but not as bad as it sounds, as anytime you die, you can quickly press escape to leave the level, which resets how many lives you lost during that level. As dying kicks you out of the level anyway, it means you can restart a level as many times as you want until you beat it without losing a life. Being able to quit out of the level like this means technically I don't have to replay the first 2 levels, as I can always press escape and leave, but I'm going to anyway, as I don't want to have to go for a game over every time I fully die and have to reload my save. After replaying the first 2 levels, next up are the 2 levels inside the Simpsons house, with the basement and the attic. Going back to grave danger in the basement, and it turns out to actually not be that difficult. There's very little platforming, instead it's more combat focused, with you taking out all the enemies and finally reaching the end to find a skeleton key. There's only 10 screens to deal with, so you can charge through a lot of these screens and beat the level like that. It only took me 1 minute and 20 seconds to beat this one on my successful attempt. After completing the first 2 levels, I did feel like I was better at the game and more used to its basic movement. Saying that, the controls are still quite frustrating to deal with. It's a 2-button game, so you move, 1 button for jumping and 1 for shooting. If you press both buttons together, you can use your secondary weapon. For this level, you can pick up a spray can and use it against these skeletons, which is pretty much required to do to beat them. Pressing 2 buttons for an action is rarely a good idea, as we saw in the Imagineering games, and this game has the same problem of sometimes it just doesn't work. You can press F9 to switch to an alternative control scheme, which switches the jump to up instead of being on a button, so each of the buttons is used for the weapons, but it's really hard to jump like this when the jumping already feels so basic. I also ended up getting caught in objects as well. If you stand too close to something and jump, you can clip into it and not jump properly. Feels like a sloppy design choice to have objects that can do this to your jump. Next up is the secret of the attic, where I got stuck before on the moose head screen. After some random jumping around, it turns out you have to jump on the sofa and then you can get yourself to the top left screen by jumping across. It's disheartening to see the same mistakes that Imagineering kept making appear in this game. How are you supposed to know that you can use these objects as platforms, and there's nothing to show that the top left corner is where you need to go? Something as basic as just showing a ladder in the top left of the screen would have helped this a lot. There's also a bee that follows you around and you can kill it, but it respawns shortly after doing so, making figuring out the route to go upwards extra annoying. Once you do get up higher, there's a room where you have to jump across the wooden planks while avoiding the metal spikes coming out of them and a horde of bats. If you fall through the gaps, you fall to the previous screen and have to climb back up. Taking damage isn't really an issue with this level, as there's a donut item near the beginning that respawns and you can use that to grind to get back to full health whenever you want, but that didn't make dealing with the bats any easier. If you get hit by them, there's knockback, so it's likely that you'll fall down and have to start again. I tried to take out all the bats before jumping my way across, but they fly at angles that you can't shoot at, and they even go off screen and can knock you off without you ever even seeing them. Ignoring the bats is probably the better idea, but it makes the timing of your jump so much harder. This room drove me crazy. The platforming isn't too hard, but the bats make this such a chore. After a couple more screens involving the bats, these screens are much easier to get through though, you're on the final stretch where these baby spiders start appearing. At the end of this, there's a giant spider which you have to take out to beat the level. Now you better hope you have enough ammo for this, because if you don't, you're soft locked in this section and have to start the level from the beginning. You can gather as many spray cans as you like, which is really good for taking out the baby spiders, but that big spider moves depending on where you're standing. It means it's impossible to hit with the spray can weapon, and you have to use a projectile. The only one you get here is the Bart balls. Gross, I know, but I had the slingshot, so I wasn't able to pick up the Bart balls ammo. It doesn't give you anything else, so I ended up running out of ammo and I was stuck. You can grind as much health and spray can as you want in this section, but it doesn't matter because you can't use those to kill the giant spider. I didn't even want the slingshot. I accidentally picked it up at the beginning of the level, as this is a game where sometimes you have to actively avoid items as it can switch your weapon to something you don't want. This meant starting from the beginning, grinding the dart gun, making sure I didn't pick up any other weapon, and then I was able to beat the spider. This is another short level once you know what you're doing, but figuring that out is such a nightmare. Admittedly, I've been putting off these next two levels as much as I could as they seem to be the hardest, but let's go back to the closet for Space Mutants Madness and Too Much TV. Space Mutants Madness is quite similar to the basement level, where it's all about the combat and taking out the Space Mutants in your way. This time though, the Space Mutants can only be killed by using the ray gun, but straight away they don't give you enough ammo. There's ammo at the beginning and you can pick it up without taking damage at first, but it's not going to be enough, but if you try and grind more ammo, you take a massive amount of damage from the Space Mutant on the cart. To get through the level though, you have to pick up 20 shots, so the best strategy at the beginning is to pick up the ammo to get the 10, go to screen 2, get hit by a Space Mutant on screen 2, get backed by him into screen 1, and then use the invincibility frames to get the extra 10 shots you need. It's insane some of the steps required to beat these levels, and with the Space Mutants being much more damaging, you either do what the game wants you to do, or just die. There's no in between. There are methods to beat these levels which usually aren't too difficult to do, but just trying to beat the game by just playing it is almost impossible. This level also features these robots who shoot lasers at you. If you don't have the cool hat by this point, the lasers damage you, but if you do have it, the lasers just go straight through. It's just another weird extreme difficulty swing. I like the idea of getting an item from one level to make another one easier, but I don't know if the level is even beatable without the hat. Halfway through the level, you do get a spot that you can grind as much ammo as you need, so after that point, the level becomes really easy. The first few screens are tough, but the level isn't too bad once you figure out how to get the extra ammo at the beginning, and if you have that cool hat. That leaves one last level, Too Much TV, which is all about Itchy and Scratchy trying to kill Bart using cartoon violence. Bit like Trials of Horror 9, actually. It starts with a loading screen showing the title card from Itchy and Scratchy while playing the theme, and it's kind of perfect. This game as a whole nails the presentation. The graphics are bright and colourful, and the character models across the game match the show so well. I'm not a massive fan of Bart's character model, it's a bit too cutesy for me, but other than that, this game looks great. It's not just about the art style though, there's references and nods to the show throughout, like the babysitter bandit in the basement, to even smaller details like Homer's bowling ball in the attic. I love the structure of this game as well, having the game start in Bart's room and then having all the levels connected from it. As an example, the movies level has Bart climb out his window, choose to go left to leave, and the first few screens show the Simpsons house followed by the Flanders house next door. During that level, you could then break into Burns Manor and actually see Mr. Burns and Smithers. Going right after climbing out the window takes you to the Maggie's ball level, which has Bart go into the Simpsons' backyard, and then it all connects, with Bart climbing up the tree and then the roof to enter the tree house. The framework of this game is so well done with it all being connected, and it grounds itself into the show while allowing itself to be more creative and jam in tons of different references. I wish the gameplay didn't let this all down so much, but the idea of the game is really solid and I love how it all fits together. Speaking of gameplay letting the game down, Too Much TV is a complete mess. It follows the same design principles as the other levels. Either find the correct way to get between the screens or you will die. There are so many things on every screen that can do damage, and it takes a few tries at the level to even understand what's going on. I ended up trying to run through most of the level as standing still meant these bombs would appear and roll towards me and do damage. The main thing you need to avoid in this level though is Scratchy. His hammer does much more damage than anything else, so you have to make sure to avoid it as much as possible. It's even okay to get hit by something else and then use those invincibility frames to run through Scratchy's hammer. The hitbox on Scratchy is a bit weird. It's only the hammer that does damage to you, so you can stand in Scratchy, wait for him to move the hammer out the way, and then run past. It took many attempts to beat this level, with most of them being running through, trying to stop at very specific points, and hoping for the best. I'm sure you could figure out the actual perfect route where you never take damage, but there's so much going on it didn't feel worthwhile. It ends on a field with American football bombs everywhere, and it felt better to rely on luck than actually try to perfectly dodge them, as the controls, as mentioned before, are so stiff. It's a cool idea for a level, but it needed to be executed much better, and it didn't need to be so punishing. With all the main levels complete, we now have all the cool items, which opens up a weird portal in Bart's room. Entering the portal takes us to the final level, Adventures in Krustyland, which is where Bart has to rescue Krusty, who is in a jungle for some reason. Your jump is upgraded for this level, so you can cover much larger distances across the screen. This may be because you've collected all the cool items and that's giving you an upgrade, or it might just be part of the fantasy Bart is having here, which is him saving his hero Krusty. The goal of the level is to get to the end of it while collecting all the Super Burt balls, as you need those to beat the boss. It means you shouldn't fire your weapon until the very end, so 90% of the level is focused on pure platforming, and they save the hardest platforming challenges just for this level. It starts out with these logs going up a waterfall. You jump across the logs as they fall down, and do that to climb up 3 different screens. The first one isn't too bad, as you can jump upwards in the middle, but once you get to the second one, you have to jump side to side to try to climb upwards. Even as you enter the second screen, if you don't immediately jump to the left, you will drop back down to the first screen and try again. You have to be so precise with the timing of your jumps to climb up this waterfall, but with enough practice, you will get to the third screen, only to fall straight back down. This final log section, I can't believe a human designed this to be fun. The logs very quickly come down, so you constantly have to jump just to stay on the screen. The only way I could do this is by mashing the jump button. Timing the jumps properly is so hard to do, as every action in this game is segmented. It means that you're either jumping or moving. There's no overlap, which means timing your jump is much harder, as if you haven't perfectly landed from a jump yet, you can't perform another jump or even queue up your next jump, so you press the jump button and nothing happens. The worst part is that you have to try and jump on the rocks on the side, which doesn't even look possible, but if you time it just right and get a bit lucky, you can jump across. Figuring out the timing of this was so difficult. It doesn't look like you can make it, but you just about can, so it came down to a bit of gut feel and praying. Getting on top of these rocks is a huge moment because this section is so repetitive and difficult. You have to jump on so many logs to do this, and it's easy to make a mistake and have to climb all the way back up again, and sometimes when that happens you take fall damage. This is so tough. It's hard to really describe the timing required here. If you're a sicko who loves really tough platformers, I recommend giving this a go. It's doable, but devoid of anything enjoyable. After the waterfall, you have to swing across vines and land on these alligators. When the alligators open their mouth or sink into the water, you fall off them and die, and dying means you're starting the level all over again and have to climb up the logs once more. This river section by itself isn't too bad, although the windows can be quite tight. The vines swinging and the sinking alligators are synced up, and they're synced in a way which means you maybe have a second standing on an alligator before you just have to go. Oh, and you have to jump from one screen to another, so it's possible to jump across screens, miss an alligator that you couldn't see, and die. After that, you're skating down a cliff collecting more Super Bart balls. The perspective of this cliff makes no sense. There are parts you can and can't stand on, but it's not clear where these are, so you have to experiment a bit and seeing where you can go. The problem is if you miss a jump, you either fall down to the next screen with no way of getting back up again, or you die. After managing to get to the bottom of the cliff for the first time, I missed a Super Bart ball, but decided to leave it, because the only way I could get it would be restart the whole level, and I'm not doing that. After avoiding a giant centipede, it's time for the final boss against Sideshow Bob. He walks back and forth and throws coconuts at you, or if he gets close enough, he can kick you for a lot of damage. There's also an ant, but that's easy to ignore. You have to shoot at Sideshow Bob using the Super Bart balls, and it takes exactly 13 shots to kill him, which is the exact number that are placed in the rest of the level. Missing that one on the cliff meant I couldn't beat the boss. I tried anyway. I ended up missing a couple of shots because you can't just shoot Sideshow Bob, you have to aim upwards when firing, so that's 13 times you have to hope the aiming upwards works, as sometimes it can just fail. This is such a depressing moment. After everything it takes to get here, running out of ammo and then being stuck feels horrible. This level is dreadful across the board. I have nothing nice to say about it. So far in this series, the museum level from Space Mutants has to be the worst level in a Simpsons game, but I think this level has it beat. The only reason it might not be worse is because House of Weirdness has a save system, whereas in Space Mutants, a game over in the museum level would send you back to the very beginning of the game. If I put that element aside though, Adventures in Krustyland I think is worse because it never gives you a break. There's no checkpoints, there's brutal platforming, and you can get to the boss and get soft-locked, which means this game ends on such a sour note. Alright, so it takes a flawless run to beat this, so let's just do that. I ended up looking at playthroughs online and even speedruns of this game to help me get through it. I had to do anything I could to give me an edge to make this level feel doable. After an hour and a half of playing this level over and over and over, I finally had that run. I got every Super Bart ball and I managed to get back to Sideshow Bob. This was so nerve-wracking. I really was being careful with every shot, as if you miss one, that's only 12 shots and it would mean you're soft-locked. Despite being really careful, I missed one of my shots. I say I missed, but look at this, The shot went straight through his head. That should have been a hit. I didn't miss, the game just didn't count it. This was again such a disheartening moment. I was legitimately depressed, knowing I had to start the level all over again. I decided, hey, I'm gonna fire the remaining shots anyway. I landed them all, but he wasn't dead, but then I realised that I'd picked up and kept 2 water balloons from the Itchy and Scratchy level. It turns out you can use these water balloons, so you don't actually need all 13 shots, and after hitting him with one of the water balloons, Sideshow Bob went down. It was quite an emotional rollercoaster ride, going from oh god no to actually beating the game. On the next screen is Krusty, and walking into the lock frees him. After an image of Krusty and Bart shaking hands, Bart rides through space with his cool gear, and you get to enter your name for the high score leaderboard. And that's it. The game resets after that. Feels like there's a cutscene missing, like Bart being let out of his room, or something like Escape from Camp Deadly had, where Bart meets up with the rest of the Simpsons family. It's weird not even having the Simpsons family appear. You get to see Lisa, Maggie, and even some cameos from Marge. But Homer isn't even in this game at all, apart from his silhouette at the very beginning. That just doesn't feel right. I guess it just shows how important Bart was back in the early 90s as a character, where nowadays Homer, I would say, is the main character of the show. There's a couple things worth mentioning before I rank the game. With this being on the MS-DOS, there's 3 different graphics options you can pick. All the footage you've been seeing so far are the best graphics available, but there's a downgraded version which looks a bit different. The third graphics option I couldn't get working, sadly. This is still technically playable, but it looks completely broken. Believe it or not, there is also a hard mode you can select from the pause menu. You can turn this on at any point, but from what I can tell, the levels stay exactly the same. I thought maybe Bart would take more damage from enemies, but that stays the same, and enemies don't have more health either. The only difference I noticed in hard mode was that your invincibility frames are massively reduced. You only get maybe a second if that after getting hit, before you're able to then get hit again, which makes the itchy and scratchy level much harder. There's no alternative ending from beating it in hard mode, so there's no real reason to do so unless you just want to be miserable. Lastly, there's a VCR mode, which allows you to re-watch yourself playing the game. So you can play a level, press tab, and then rewind and fast forward through a playback of your gameplay. Pretty innovative, really, although your use of this feature depends on how much you enjoy the game in the first place. So that's Bart's House of Weirdness. As always, I'll be ranking the game based on whether it's a good game and its worth to Simpsons fans. Let's start with its worth for Simpsons fans first, because in terms of what a Simpsons game should be with its setting and look, House of Weirdness is almost perfect. It's not one-to-one with the show visually, of course, but really captures it in its own way, and all the little details are really great to see. I love the connected world in this game, from exploring Bart's imagination in an itchy-scratchy cartoon, to keeping things more mundane and grounded by having Bart explore Springfield and the Simpsons' home. I wish Homer was in the game, sure, but each level still has its own references and feels like a video game version of the Simpsons world. All of this is let down by the fact that this is definitely not a good game. It's a dangerous combination of being overly basic and overly punishing. The movement is terrible. This plays like what a student would make as their first platformer project in Unity as they're learning how to make a game. Yes, you can move, jump and shoot, but these mechanics are simplified to an extreme. The level design for the most part does allow for an easy time, but only if you know what you're doing for every screen of the level. With some of the easier levels, it can be satisfying going through that process and figuring them out, but the annoying enemies and instant kill pits make life much more frustrating than it should be. And for the later levels, when enemies do more damage, it just becomes really hard to play. Just a bit more forgiveness and freedom would have gone a long way here, but this is another old game where it's really hard, probably because it's also really short. Bart's House of Weirdness is shorter than Escape from Camp Deadly once you know what you're doing, but it's so much more difficult to enjoy. The Too Much TV and Adventures in Krustyland levels completely sink this game for me. The gameplay makes it worse than the NES versions of both Bart vs. the Space Mutants and Bart vs. the World. For ranking Bart's House of Weirdness, I'm going to put it at number 9, below Bart vs. the Space Mutants for the ZX Spectrum, but above Bart vs. the World for the Atari ST. The Bart vs. the World ports have their own gameplay problems, but they lack the amazing graphics and level concepts that Bart's House of Weirdness has, so I think it deserves to go above them. I can't put it any higher than this though, due to its gameplay and difficulty. If the game just controlled a bit better and was just a bit easier, it would have shot up the list, and had the potential to go all the way to the top, but sadly that's not the game we got. As someone who never experienced this game before, I thought it looked interesting, and I would love to be saying that this was something really cool and that it's worth playing, but I can't. It has a lot of potential, and if this did turn out to be a simple adventure game, I would have loved it. The developers didn't have much experience in making platforming games, but platform games were the biggest genre at the time, so they forced it to be a platforming game, and we got something pretty amateur, and all the potential is wasted. It's only worth playing if you want to play every Simpsons game, like me, rather than it actually being fun. And that's Bart's House of Weirdness put on the list. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment or give the video a like, and I will see you next time for Krusty's Funhouse. I know I said this last time, but the dodgy platforming has to stop at some point in these Simpsons games. Right? Right?